Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Diet Time is here. That's right, we're talking A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal Patrick Hamilton coming to you once again from 1428 Elm Street. It's our old hangout place. This is the Kill by Kill podcast where we're dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. Now we're going to unpack all the goriest of details of the remake rebootical of A Nightmare on Elm. I don't really remember what it's called. It's A Nightmare on Elm Street, for Christ's sakes. And of course, there's only one person that I trust to help me, that if I need to figure out where something terrible happened, she'll point at the sign and says, it's kind of like Bad Man Preschool. That's a big fucking clue, you idiot. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
I'm good, but I thought you were going to tell me I would look it up on Zoom Blaster or whatever the fake search engine they were using was.
Yeah, Zoom Blaster getting a lot of play in this movie.
I don't remember what it was called. It was something like that, though.
Well, I just remember when they hit search, it goes blasting off. And all I can think about is my kid's current Pokemon obsession, where Team Rocket always talks about blasting off. And I'm like, this is weird that I now am conflating Pokemon and A Nightmare on Elm Street. These two things don't go together, quite like a lot of things in this movie.
Yeah, indeed. And in regards to Bad Man Preschool, I was actually like staring at it, like my eyes were like, Bad Ham?
I think like John Badham, who vaunted director of Saturday Night Fever and his 1979 Sexy Dracula, which I really like, that Frank Langella Dracula. He's a hot piece of Dracula meat.
It's a good one. It's a good one. We should talk about that at some point.
And they have some fantastic laser sex. But before we get into Dracula laser sex, which is a real thing, I don't want to alarm you, Gina, but we are not alone. That's right. We have a special guest. Not only is he the host of Deep in Bear Country, the most famous podcast ever mentioned in a Nextdoor post, it continues to circulate to this day, but he's also the host of It's Del Toro Time. And of course, he's the very first guest that we ever had on Kill by Kill. So it is a genuine pleasure to welcome the first and the only, the real returning champion to Kill by Kill, Mr. Phil Gonzales. How are you doing today, Phil?
Your memories are what feed me. That's my fun Freddy Krueger impression. I had to try to make my lips not move in order to say it appropriately. He gets off some real zingers like, I'm gonna kill you and run all you want and things like that. What a hilarious, fun character he is to watch on screen for all of 10 minutes that he's actually on screen.
Well, I think that puts him in the same range as the original Freddy Krueger in the first film. Here's the deal, everybody. I came into this really giving this bad boy a fair shot. I didn't take notes. I just sat down, put it on the biggest TV we had in the house, and just let the fucker run and see if it couldn't, like, I would end up at the end like, you know what? I was wrong. There's so much to like about this movie. And you know what, guys? I was wrong. There's a lot to like about this movie. And then it actively fucks over all of those good ideas and things. It's like it hates itself, and by extension hates me for liking parts of it. And for that, it's even more irritating than I thought it would be.
It's punishing viewers for having the audacity to think that horror movies are fun sometimes. So they're speeding along. They're hitting all those. They're playing all the hits for mostly part one, mostly the original. There's a couple references to other movies in the series, and then they're like, you know what? Let's take things into a hard left turn into rape.
Yes.
Well, and I've never watched. It's been so long. I mean, I watched this 10 years ago when it first came out, and I was like, ugh, whatever. And it's watching it again. I was like, I have just not witnessed a movie recently where nobody involved seemed to enjoy making it, or like want to make it, or had any original like idea. They were basically just like sort of remake the original, make everything brown, and we'll be done with it. And that's it. It's a brown version of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and then and then it ends. Except they took anything fun, even the look. Freddy. There's a moment in the original where Freddy looks at the camera and he cuts off his finger, and you're like, oh, that delight, that imp, that little like that just little guy. He's a real dream ghoul, isn't he? And in this, I can't imagine this Freddy. This Freddy doesn't even want to be a killer. He just sort of mopes around. And I was like, oh, right. Like, not even Freddy wants to be Freddy Krueger in this movie.
Well, unless he's bursting his entire forearm through somebody's chest,
right?
Like he's a goddamn xenomorph.
That was like the only part I thought was kind of cool.
Really?
I just because it was slightly, I wasn't really paying attention at that point, and it kind of
woke you up.
I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, goodness.
Hey,
Freddy Krueger's doing something.
Hey, we're bursting here. All right, everybody.
He's not just
gas.
muttering. He's not just muttering and snarling.
I have to say that when this movie was announced, I was actually pretty excited about it, because I was like, it's 2010. No one really cares about A Nightmare on Elm Street anymore. This is like your opportunity. You can do anything you want. All you need to do to remake it, because nobody cares at this point. Audiences don't care. Just all you need is a guy named Freddy Krueger haunting people in their dreams. And it's the dream world. We have special effects. You can go nuts with this movie. You can make this just balls to the wall, terrifying and weird and scary. And instead, it's just sitting there, just not doing anything.
Here we are back in the basement again.
I was like, why is the dream world just, why does the real world look as just threatening and drab as the dream world? Like, that's my big thing. It's like, everything's just so just bland. And this is a guy who did commercials and music videos, for crying out loud.
I mean, this Samuel Bayer, when you look at the commercials he made, he's very much award-winning, and he should be.
Yeah.
Like, he's an incredible visual stylist. But let's just run down his murderer's row of just some of the highlights of music videos that he directed.
Yeah.
Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Terrifying in and of itself.
I mean, talk about, instead of brown, it's green, but you kind of see the link between the two.
Right.
But you also have No Rain for Blind Melon. You've got Melissa Etheridge's Come to My Window. You've got Zombie for the Cranberries. Bullet with fucking butterfly wings. This guy is not fucking around, and he was dragged literally with his fingernails on the ground into making this movie.
Yeah.
And you can feel it. Now, that's not to say that there aren't visual moments in this that I genuinely like, because I like how it can slip in and out real fast. And I think there was an opportunity to do something cool. And it feels like everyone behind the scenes was like, I don't know, we could try, but it seems like that would cost $1.50 more. So let's not. And they don't.
And they had to squeeze in, like I said, all the classics. Well, it's a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. You got to have him, coming through her bedroom wall.
Oh, Jesus!
It's a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. You have to have, her friend, flying around, the room. It's a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. You have to have her friend in a body bag. It sort of feels like, when you're watching like someone's elbowing you, like, hey, remember that scene? Remember that? You remember that scene, right? Oh, look! Remember that scene? They're gonna do it again. Watch.
You also have to apparently have every single teenager be completely unrelatable. Hey, remember how we loved Nancy because she couldn't relate to people and she was socially like awkward and hated? Like, no, Nancy was our identifying character. She was the one we were supposed to be like comfortable with. And instead, Rooney Mara is playing her like she just got the letter that she got rejected from art school for the third time, like the entire movie.
She's kind of playing her like she was doing two movies at once, where she was filming this and also playing Samara in the Ring movies.
Right. A little bit.
It's like not everybody has to be a dream demon.
you want to limit your movies to a single dream demon at a time, because otherwise things get very, very cluttered. And it's not to say that she isn't trying to act. In fact, I would say, with the exception of Kellen Lutz, which even saying that name sounds stupefyingly ridiculous, they are genuinely giving their all to these bad ideas. Like they're trying to get this across. But to describe the dire circumstances in which this movie was made, when Rooney Mara was initially cast in this role, her first thought was to give up acting entirely to avoid it.
That's a good idea. It's always a good idea. In fact, I would say that to any aspiring young actor. After your first role, please just give up acting entirely.
Just walk away. Make some room for the rest of us, okay?
There's too many of you in the world.
Let's talk about Kellen Lutz here for a second, because he's the first person to be dispatched. So this is a slight twist to the original film, which doesn't start with a death. So they're trying to do something different here by filming it in the Riverdale diner before Riverdale was on TV, by the looks of it. And you have him falling asleep at the table and then wandering back into the kitchen where there's just pig faces in open flame. And that's not going to get you an A rating. I'm just going to come out right now that pig faces in open flame just on a griddle, you need to make pancakes on that shit. That's not going to be okay, everyone. Thank God it's only a nightmare. But he's visited by Katie Cassidy's character, whose name is Chris. And she looks like she's out of some sort of hair product commercial. She is so polished looking in comparison to everyone else in the movie that it is fucking distracting.
Yeah, there's a part where she wakes up from having a nightmare and she has a full face of makeup on. Just a full face of makeup.
When she has a nightmare in class, it is the most glamorous nightmare I've ever seen in my life.
Well, and that's the thing is, and I know it's unfair to go back and forth comparing this to the original, but they are desperately asking us to keep comparing it to the original. And one of the strengths of the original is it is firmly set in like everyday suburban America. Like you look at the way it's filmed and you're like, it's brightly lit. You recognize this place. It's comfortable. And that way, when you go into the horror, you realize that the horror is either intruding on our world or you have entered horror's realm. Every single shot in this movie is filmed like the Smells Like Teen Spirit video. And which makes the models who are playing the leads look more like models, which makes all the shadows just in everyday life look more like shadows. And you point out that diner scene, the diner just looks like a nightmare the entire time. So there's no like, oh no, now we're in the nightmare realm. Like everything just looks dark and gloomy.
I suppose it's a choice. And it's just a bad choice. And the film doesn't make all bad choices, but the bad choices that they do make very much suck all the joy, energy, interest out of the good ones. And like, I love how Kellen Lutz's character dies, where you get this thing that you kind of hinted at in Craven's version, where he's killing people in a way that makes it look like they're killing themselves. Yeah. And so instead of the hanging where you can, it's a little hinky and Freddy walking through the bars looks a little, but it still works in a dream logic sort of way, because that movie is better at translating, a nightmare is happening. Here, when he gets up and he holds a knife to his throat and just slashes himself all the way across, I was like, yay, I don't even remember this happening when I saw it when it came out. Maybe this is great. Maybe I'll love this. And I was wrong. But I like that part. Yay!
Yeah.
Good movie.
But he also gets a cut on his hand in the dream, and he has the cut on his hand in real life.
Yeah.
And it's that movie thing where I'm like, oh no, you don't just wad up a paper towel and like hold. That's a deep cut. Like that's my thing with Freddy's claws all throughout this movie is they act like they're like, those are some pretty bad cuts, but then like they're fine. And I'm like, no, dude, like you get cut like that. Like that's bad news. That's going to get an infection. At least when Nancy wakes up with the cuts, they do take her to the hospital, but the kids with the cuts in the flashback where it's like, oh yeah, he was slashing up their back something good. I'm like, yeah. And then you would take him to the hospital and this whole movie would never happen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the whole thing with the backstory. It's if you think about it for a nano fraction of a second, it doesn't. None of it makes a lick of sense. These people who, the writers of this movie don't know how repressed memories work.
God, no.
They don't know. They don't know how any of this works. And
it's all brushed aside with a character saying literally, who remembers being 5 years old? I'm like, I do.
It's like you a bunch of people, then beyond the whole, killing a man, granted, for some unknown reason, the audience is made to believe for about 5 minutes that maybe he didn't do it, but he did.
But that would have been awesome.
That's all squared away. But then apparently all the parents decided they were going to collectively gaslight their children.
Yes.
Into forgetting that they had gone to school with each other.
How do you do that? How do you convince your children they never went to school?
Like, how do you?
But then they stay in the same. Then a bunch of them stay in the same town.
Yeah, they're just still friends. I'm like, how does this work? Apparently, they all live on Elm Street.
And I mean, and not to get too heavy, but I would think that survivors of a child molestation ring, not even a ring, one guy. You would think that the family would say, well, maybe it'd be better for them if they had each other to lean on. Nope. They're just, nope. We're just all that going to school. Those kids, yep, that never happened. That never happened. Shh, just go to sleep. Go to sleep. Let me just put this rag of ether over your face so you'll wake up tomorrow morning never remembering it at all.
Like, how did they keep saying, like, I only met him in high school. You live on the same fucking street.
Right.
How were they separated for goddamn elementary school and junior high? How did that work? Why did they decide to all right, listen, they're in high school. Let's just fucking get them together now. And why does them being randomly teenagers now then wake up Freddy Krueger? Like, at least, oh, God damn it. Nobody knows how Freddy Krueger works. I got to stop thinking that rules apply here, but holy fuck, it's so weird that they just decide, like, as long as I hide some photos, they'll never remember that the most traumatic thing that could possibly happen to you and at 5 years old, they'd magically forget. My mom closed the station wagon door on my finger accidentally in preschool, and I remember it like it goddamn happened a minute ago.
Right, because most memories start at about 2 or 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Most people remember going to kindergarten.
Yeah. People don't remember like what they had for lunch when they're 5. But they would remember the guy who took them to a fucking cave
and slashed up their
preschool.
backs.
Yes, and slashed their backs open. Like, come on.
Well, okay, so I know that Craven went on the record as saying, like, originally I wanted Freddy to be a child molester, but they thought that was too intense. And I'm like, first of all, I firmly believe that that's like something he came up with later on for like cred, because it's not a good idea. You want your audience to be entertained by this monster. And as soon as molestation comes in, a child killer, that's sort of vague. And you're like, yeah, like a serial killer kills kids for various reasons, but they never go into it. They're just like,
you don't see
Krueger was a child killer.
flashbacks of him like actively at work and the child murders.
This one he's just like perving on them, and it's like, oh, this isn't fun anymore.
Yeah, this isn't fun. That's not. He becomes a monster. He's supposed to be like a boogeyman or a ghoul, and to give him this like weird. First of all, to give him flashbacks and make him like kind of the simple-minded like school groundskeeper where he's like, hey kids, I really like the kids. I'm like, wait a minute, how does he go from this to like, I was just trying to pet him? I'm like, that's not the same guy. Because we never really get a sense of who Freddy Krueger was as an adult in the original series, it works. It's fine. He's a boogeyman. But to humanize him like this, and then to see him like running panicked from the mob of parents being like, I didn't do it. I was like, wait, where are they going with this? To the extent, and this was on Twitter when I was originally like going off about this. When I originally watched this movie, I was like, and they bring it up in the film, I was like, oh crap, this is great. Are we going to finally get a Nightmare on Elm Street where Freddy was actually innocent? And we're like, maybe it was one of these like celebrity parents who actually was committing the crimes. That's an idea.
That's a hell of an idea.
Like maybe it was the police chief dad who was actually doing it and covered it up and convinced all the parents that it was this like groundskeeper, and then that's why he's committing all these like dream murders, because like the whole like he's like the Pied Piper, he's getting back at the town when all he ever did was nice things for the town. And so I was super excited watching this. I was like, yes, that's an idea. That's a strong choice. Make Freddy like Candyman. He's a vengeful. Nope. It's just the same. He's just a child molester. He's a child molester who wants to perv on Nancy. The end. And I was like, oh, great. Thanks for ruining it, assholes.
Can we just talk about poor Jackie Earle Haley?
Oh,
I mean, you talk about a typecasting you don't want.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is at least the third movie I had seen him in where he was a child molester.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to give him another thing. Like, he was fine as like a smart alecky guy on that Human Target show on Fox for 5 minutes. He's a perfectly versatile fucking actor. And just because of little children, we don't have to condemn him to a life of playing child molesters any more than as a teenager he had to be condemned to playing the same role he did in the Bad News Bears. This poor guy.
I can just imagine like just looking through his scripts and like, nah, there's another one. You know?
Well, and of course we know from interviews that when this cast arrived on set, they were handed a script that they did not audition with. Like, the filming script for this movie was substantially changed from what all the cast was sold. So who knows? For all we know, Freddy was the hero at the end of the movie he was given.
The screenwriters did talk about how the big hook that they got everyone signed off on initially was that Freddy was going to be innocent.
Yes.
And so therefore, this is a revenge tale. And then you would have an active mystery for the kids to solve where they think, no, Freddy is still a villain here, but in order to undo the curse, it's a lot more, there's a bit more going on to it because you would then have a secondary villain that you would have to overcome or put him in the way of Freddy, or it would just change it. It would change the dynamic. It would give this fucking thing life. And I cannot understand why they decided, no. No one's going to accept it. Let's just make it creepier and grosser and have Freddy comment on Nancy's dress.
Yeah.
Like, guys, that's not what the I'm your boyfriend now thing is about.
No, it's about the DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. It's about him becoming his DJ now, Princey.
You have to be ready for Freddy. That's what the Fat Boys taught us.
Yeah. And I know that in the original Nightmare, Freddy wasn't as jokey as he ended up being. Like, I've seen it a million times. I've seen it recently. Yes. But he was still like impish. And like, you had the feeling that this was like a guy. This wasn't Fred Krueger. This was some like bizarre, like otherworldly creature who was just sort of like in the form of Fred Krueger. And because he made his arms grow and he was kind of enjoying being in this like weird realm. But this is just like a burned guy who just like screwed around with kids. And I'm like, why would I ever want to watch a movie about this?
Speaking of burned guy. So here's the other, this just displays to you how much they decided to fuck this victory into a defeat. So they recruit these special effects guys to come up with a very realistic looking burn makeup and effects package for Freddy. And you can still see it. It's in a movie called The Dark Knight with Two-Face. And they looked at that and they said, no way. that's going to be too weird. No audience is going to want to look at that fascinating piece of special effects work. Let's make him look like a dry eraser. He can't move his fucking lips.
I was gonna say that do you remember the Titanica sketch from Mr. Show? Where the kid jumps into the vat of acid from the neck down. He was supposed to say he's made of Slim Jims. That's all I kept thinking about. He just looks like his face is carved from Slim Jims.
He looks like someone who would have been ground up by the Victorians and like drunk as a drink at some like rich person's party. Like he looks like the worst mummy. And as Jackie Earl Haley said, he couldn't even talk in the makeup. Like they had to loop all of his dialogue because he couldn't move his lips. Let's look at this guy. He can barely move his face. And I'm like, that's not a good monster. I mean, even the mummy turned into a handsome man a third of the way through the original film because no one wants to watch a mummy that can't move its face. That's not entertaining.
He looks like a chew toy.
Yeah.
It is such an odd fucking choice to go, you know what? He should look like, not leather, but pleather and a tercel from 2002.
And it's another thing to look at the original Freddy Krueger makeup and be like, this makeup has stood the test of time for like 30 years. Let's just do something completely opposite. Let's make something that's not marketable, that's not interesting, that just looks like a meatball. Like it looks like Meatball Man with barely any. I don't know what they're trying to go for, but it did not. And I get it. I know that special effects artists, makeup artists, they're working under a time crunch. The ideas are being changed left and right. They got to go with. And I'm not trying to slag on like makeup artists and the effects because I know that they were doing their best. But whoever had final say, like, go back a few iterations, maybe something that at least had character to it.
I mean, can you imagine if this movie had that Two-Face style look, but the whole face? That would have been really gross. It would have been a very different looking and sounding and acting Freddy than you would have gotten in the original franchise.
But could you have done that for $35 million?
I don't know, but I think it would have been a better attempt than what I was given, which looks like a baseball that my son has colored over with, some sort of beige crayon. It is useless. And it just sinks all of the acting he's trying to push into the role. It makes everyone trying to be afraid look stupid, because he looks stupid. And it's just, oh my God, there's so many bad decisions. For fuck's sake. This starts with a credit sequence in which all the credits are written in crayon on the ground.
Yep.
But then they put other fucking typography over it saying the same thing. How
I think they're trying to
stupid.
I think they're trying to go for that whole 7 thing.
It did not work.
The really
what would have
elaborate
given them
opening
the
credits
7 thing. The fucking chalk letters would have actually. Don't give me the same words.
I was going to say hiring David Fincher.
Yeah, you know what would have helped? A dabbling of Fincher.
Yeah, and there's so many elements in this that, like the little girls skipping rope and singing 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
Yeah.
Like in the original, like that's a thing. Like they're like, hey, it's that weird nursery rhyme. Like Freddy Krueger is someone that people know about. Like the only reason the kids had never heard of him is because they didn't have the internet and they weren't like, cued into like the history of their town. But in this version of it, I'm like, Fred Krueger existed and disappeared. And like, how did that enter like the public just how did everyone just forget this guy ever existed? Like everyone.
Yeah, again, like I said before, if you think about it too much, it doesn't make any sense. Like, okay, so the nursery school still shut down. So clearly somebody heard about this scandal of them putting
the loss of one groundskeeper tanked this entire preschool.
Yeah. The preschool, is so shut down that the property has not been used since. No one's even entered it apparently because everything is still there.
Yeah,
some 13 years later.
And the entire rationale for them trying to make them memory hole their entire preschool existence is that according to Clancy Brown, who's at his Clancy Browningish in this movie, is that they did not want them to have to relive their molestation on the stand. And listen, I get that idea, but also maybe the gigantic evidence dungeon that was right beneath the fucking school would have maybe, just maybe, got him convicted if they had actually signed the fucking warrant, unlike the original movie.
Maybe the kid having looking like she was attacked by a werewolf. Maybe that could have been the proof that they needed.
She was in a Wolverine fight.
And I hate to try to psychoanalyze a fictional child molester, but that is what this movie has driven us to. So my apologies, but why the fuck would a child molester claw up a child and then send it on its way? That's why Freddy Krueger works as a child murderer, because he murdered people and then got rid of them. This is a guy, I'm like, it doesn't make any sense from a plot perspective, from a story perspective, from a character perspective. It's just there for shock value and for people to be like, oh yeah, Platinum Dunes is really going there. But it's not fun or interesting. It just creates, as Gina said, plot hole after plot hole. I think this is Platinum Dunes disease, because you see them working with the idea of a town conspiracy in that first Marcus Nispel Texas Chainsaw remake, right? Yeah.
And it kind of works there. It kind of works.
Because that's what Texas Chainsaw is kind of about.
Yes. But then they tried to do it again in Friday the 13th, 2009. And that makes no fucking sense, because no one explains to us how this town is benefiting from Jason Voorhees's pot/teen murder business.
Right.
Is this it's paying for their sidewalks? We don't pay as much in property tax because we're getting those big pot/child murder kickbacks from old Voorhees up the hill. So we don't want to fuck that up. So we keep it mum.
Yeah.
Here, they're like, hey, if it worked 1.5 times, let's do it again. It's an adult conspiracy, and it's in the original movie, but let's make it dumber and harder to maintain and stupid and weirdly sexual for no fucking benefit whatsoever to be edgelords.
So I have a contact who contacted me about this movie. Ooh. And he wishes to remain anonymous. He's in the biz.
Okay.
And he was around this movie while it was being developed. And he told me that originally the idea was that the whole Platinum Dunes was they were trying to make a team of sympathetic monsters, misunderstood monsters. Leatherface, Jason, they all had their sympathetic backgrounds. And that one of the original ideas that they were developing was for Freddy to have been framed by the kids.
Oh. So it's like The Burning.
Right, which is even worse. But also because they were we want him to be a sympathetic monster created by outside events. Okay. But the real monsters are the people. Well, I guess the real monsters are the 5-year-olds, but the idea,
as someone who's raised at least one of them, they're not half wrong.
But the idea of Platinum Dunes creating this world of misunderstood monsters who have been driven to where they are was abandoned at the last minute. And they were no. He's going to be a child molester. They cobbled together the script literally last minute. And they went on from there to just sort of do it as a remake. But I found that interesting that for a while he was actually framed by the kids.
The most simple fix, because you have Clancy Brown right there.
Yeah. And he's sinister.
Clancy Brown either frame him just because there's a fervor, they just get they toss themselves into the only explanation for this must be this simple groundskeeper molesting our children, and burns the guy alive when it never happened. Or as you suggested, him covering up for his own crimes.
Yeah.
Either one of those would have fucking worked. And they just they clawed that interesting idea into the jaws of what the fuckery.
Yeah, now Clancy Brown still comes off as sort of villainous because
Yes.
but to what end? So clearly he bullied these other parents into not going to the cops because he didn't want his kid to have to testify. It's like, well, your kid might not have had to testify.
This is the second movie we have covered, Gina, in which a high school principal has a history of burning people alive. 2 movies.
One of my, I was going to say one of my friends, actually my child, Ollie, co-host of It's Del Toro Time, pointed out that the plot of the innocent, public school, like elementary school groundskeeper being framed by the parents and murdered by them and coming back as a somewhat vengeful spirit was actually done as an episode of Supernatural later on. Like Supernatural made it work. Supernatural made it into a viable plot. Why couldn't the 2010 A Nightmare on Elm Street?
I think because in their mind, they had to deliver. They thought that the audience would reject anything that was outside of the scope of how the public viewed Freddy Krueger. But at this point, and to this very minute, Freddy Krueger has been so many things.
Yes.
That I think people would have honestly gone, well, that's kind of cool because now he's a grudge. He's a vengeance demon. Like it makes sense. The Pied Piper thing is like right there.
Yeah, like this guy who now haunts the town because they did him wrong, and now they can't escape this. And can I say something very controversial? Can I make a controversial movie opinion?
Oh no! All right.
As
Gina,
if I was on.
You've got.
I'm ready.
Gina, you've got your hot take helmet on.
I do.
Can I make a serious? As if I am on Twitter.com. Here I go.
Okay,
Here I go. My controversial movie hot take is this.
Sure.
People who care that much about genre films are an insignificant portion of the movie-going public. People who actually care about Freddy Krueger's backstory would not affect the bottom line of the box office at all. They could have Freddy Krueger be played by anyone with any kind of makeup, and as long as there was a guy named Freddy Krueger and he was killing people in their nightmares, they could do anything and call it A Nightmare on Elm Street. And movie audiences would be fine with that because 90% of movie audiences today only know that there's a guy named Freddy Krueger who kills people in their nightmares. That's it. And then maybe that he has a glove on his hand. And that's it. Like that's in the public consciousness. It's been decades since anyone cared about Freddy Krueger. You can do anything with that character.
And just to prove a point, this movie made a shit ton of money.
It's the most successful one in the whole series.
Yeah.
Yes.
The whole series.
The whole series. That's how much people were excited to see a Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Yeah.
And they could have instantly made so many more of these if they had only stuck to I don't know about the original guns. Let's say if they had just taken the path that was right there in front of them and just walked right down it and delivered that movie, even if it had been somewhat dull, a little bit dour, I think they would have recovered from it. But when you actively set up cool twists and interesting ideas within a movie and just pull that rug out from underneath people and replace it with child molestation
and dirty basements
and Polaroids, which you flirt with showing us.
Oh, yeah. Right at that point, it's like, you lost me, movie.
No.
Yeah.
You cannot recover from that.
One of the most delightful things about the original is Nancy pulling Freddy into her world, into her realm.
Yeah.
And they're in just basically the Home Alone house. And you finally get to see this monster brought low by being brought into just the daylight, and just to see how he's this ridiculous guy in a sweater and how he gets knocked around by sledgehammers and things exploding in his face. And you're like, hell yeah. Like You pulled the monster out and he's not that powerful. But when you pull him out of your dreams in this movie, he's still in this filth realm that just looks, it doesn't look any different. They cut him with the world's sharpest elementary school paper cutter. Like
Rats have been working at it, sharpening it this entire time.
Can I ask a logistical question?
Of course.
How did Marcus Yun, the guy that they find his like vlog posts, how did he upload them to the internet?
Well, when his face smashed into the video screen,
yeah, was he supposed to have been killed then? Or did
I guess.
Or did he pass out and just collapse against the monitor?
The illusion they're giving there is that he somehow smashed his face through a computer screen to die.
You know how the monitor of your computer is also the camera? You know how that works? Or else he somehow shattered a very tiny webcam.
Oh, that would be even better. If he died via by having his face shoved through a webcam camera, that would be fantastic.
I was very disappointed that like after the video, she didn't click on the next post and R.I.P. Marcus. I absolutely expected that to happen.
Or she clicks on the next video and it's just him with like a bandage on his head and he's like, I don't know what that was all about.
I'm sorry, I reached for my can of Pepsi and I fell.
Sorry, I forgot I had this plexiglass shield between me and my computer that I have there in case I violently lunge forward in my sleep.
I mean, but not a few weeks ago, it was revealed that the current Bachelor on ABC's The Bachelor sliced open his forehead by just banging his head into a golf cart and into the glass he was holding. And he sustained not life-threatening, his face hit glass.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, we have cool things introduced. We have these micro naps introduced, which is a neat idea. But
That's
which goes
fantastic idea.
It's a neat idea, but all that means is that we just get more nightmare sequences which go nowhere. And I'm like, I was like, this is great. What if they're having waking nightmares and that's allowing Freddy to slip in and out of our reality and do things briefly do things to people like outside the realm of dreams. Like that's a neat idea. Nope, doesn't go anywhere.
No.
And then they bring in Marcus Yun as like this vlogger. And I was like, maybe he's going to be their contact. And like, nope, they just kill him right off. Like, it's just these little ideas that just pop up and then they just cut them right down. Like they're the Freddys cutting down great ideas in the prime of their life as if they were the teenagers and the filmmakers were the dream demons just slicing down innocence before we can enjoy them.
Oh my God. I mean, one of the things that this movie does preserve that I congratulate them for, and I think they are attempting to deliver on it, is the Tina, person who's now Katie.
Chris.
Played by Katie.
Crazy. Katie Chris. She is supposed to be sort of a Scream-esque. You think she's going to be the lead in the movie, and then she's taken out at the end of Act 1, and it's this big rug pulling where you're like, well, I don't know who's going to live in this movie. And they try to do that here, but they execute it so poorly and weirdly. And she shows up at Kellen Lutz's funeral in a cleavage-bearing trench coat.
Yes.
We have seen some people show up to funerals in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise in some odd accoutrement, but we have yet to see anyone vamp it up at a funeral, and for no effect, for no reason. It says nothing about her character. It just is so out of place. Someone said, well, if we're going to cast Katie Cassidy, we have to make her sexy 24/7. It's like, well, that's not what the movie we're making is.
And I'm like, if you're trying to do a Psycho, which they are obviously trying to do, then call her Nancy. make her Nancy, make her look more like you would expect the lead to be, the survivor to be, so that it actually is a twist. Don't just make her the character that looks like she's going to get murdered by her boyfriend, like, anyway, because we're just waiting. Even if we don't know the plot of Nightmare on Elm Street, we're just waiting for it. Like, set her up then as your lead. Do what Alfred Hitchcock did, and don't like berate your leading actresses until they want to leave the industry, but do the other stuff that Alfred Hitchcock did. Make a suspenseful beginning.
But that's the thing. We can't wish for the movie that could have been.
Right.
We can only evaluate the movie that is delivered.
Yeah.
And while I like certain elements of it, and I feel like at times it feels like, oh, if they had only leaned into this, it would have been so much better. At the end of the day, it isn't any of those things. And as a result, you just get, like, every time it tries to ape the original film, like with that Freddy wall, it looks shitty.
Yeah.
It just looks terrible. And it makes you, all it does is remind you of how amazing Craven's original is. That is one of the most iconic, interesting, and cheap effects ever executed. And it looks so dumb here. It looks dumb in comparison to how it looks in The Frighteners. And that was made by rubbing two small New Zealand coins together really hard to spark electricity. It is just infuriatingly frustrating because it is right on the edge of making smart decisions, and then it doesn't. It like actively hates smart decisions and makes you feel bad for almost liking it.
Yeah, it really, like I said, it punishes the viewer who went into this thinking that it might be fun.
Yeah.
It's like, are you having fun now? He's about to rape her.
Right.
Oh God.
And I'll say
he's making references to when he did rape her in the past.
Right. And you know what? We had a Nightmare on Elm Street remake or reboot. It was called The Cell in 2000. And there was a movie that used nightmare imagery with a killer in a way that was not like a Nightmare on Elm Street, but used the notion of nightmares and dreams in the subconscious in an effective way that wasn't aping a Nightmare on Elm Street. And if this remake had gone more in that direction, the abstract, the obscure, if it had played in the sandbox a little bit, it could have been at least it would not have had me looking at my phone for the last 30 minutes because it gets so boring by the end as well. It's relentless. The nightmares never stop, so they stop being scary. Freddy's not an interesting character. The leads aren't interesting. They look like they don't know what they're doing. It seems like they were handed their scripts like 10 minutes before the film started rolling. And then at the end, they dared to try to do a pull the mom through a thing ending. And at that point, it's just like, why are you even doing it? Like, it doesn't even feel like the rest of the movie. It makes the mom getting pulled through the window in the original look like a sensible filmmaking choice.
I mean, can we speak ever so briefly about the transition from Ronnie Blakely, who is so insanely, drunkenly spectacular in that original Nightmare on Elm Street? And I kind of understand Connie Britton goes, listen, I don't want to compete with that. I want to try to do something that would be different than that. But I also think different does not equate to, well, I'll appear on camera and I'll kind of say my lines. This is the dullest Connie Britton performance I have ever seen. It must be intentional. I just don't know what effect it is that intention was. Why is she so bland? Why is she so out of it? Is she on drugs? At least Ronnie Blakely's character was blithely drunk to the point where every time she pulled out a bottle, it was slightly larger than the last bottle of alcohol. And here she's just like indistinguishable from wallpaper. And that is not why you hire Connie fucking Britton.
Yeah. None of these parents, and at least in the original, you could see the parents were struggling with guilt, I would say. Yes. But here it's just like, yeah, we killed a man, then we gaslit our kids. It was to it was to protect them. You got to do what you got to do. Yeah,
You're
sure.
mainly worried about their property values.
One day these these memories of having their bodily autonomy taken from them might just come shrieking back out of nowhere when they're like 17 or 18. But we'll put them in therapy. That's a 10 years from now problem. That's not a right now problem.
Speaking of which, let's talk about Kyle Gallner's. He's about as far away from a Johnny Depp as you can get.
Yeah.
He always is like the entire movie he looks like he's about to cry.
I think that's a choice. I think that's why they hired him, because he seems so sensitive. And I think it's an intention. Again, to what effect? They set up this thing where his character takes ADHD medication, and so he can slightly stay up longer than everyone else.
Which is not actually true.
I know.
Hey, it's magic ADHD medication.
It does not. It does not keep you awake at night.
I know. But for the sake of the movie, let's say there's some magical mix of it that does. Just like there was the magical mix of some other medication that we're going to see in Freddy versus Jason that makes you not have nightmares, and it comes out of Dream Warriors. Like that medication isn't real either. So, okay, it's just movie bullshit. That I can live with. But if you're setting it up that it does a specific thing, I would like to see it pay off. I want Chekhov's ADHD medication to do something other than him showing up at a pharmacy and you reliving that thing we've all had, which is just trying to get a refill of the medication you've been prescribed, and some guy going, "Can't do nothing for you, man." Like, that's not the nightmare I'm looking for in this motion picture. Our American version of health insurance. That is a different nightmare than I want it portrayed in this movie.
Or at least have him go into like a micro nap, turn around, and the pharmacist has been replaced by Freddy Krueger, or is wearing Freddy Krueger's sweater and says something like about like, "I got your refills right here," or something, just so that we know that like this is the thing that is like manipulating this person's dreams, instead of just having the lights flash and then Freddy runs on with his glove.
But just 1 second after that, right? When Rooney Mara, Nancy runs in and she starts micro napping in between reality and the dream, and Freddy's able to swipe at her with his claw and knock things off the shelf. Yeah. You keep warping back and forth. That's cool. Everybody, I love that.
So did you read the interview with the original screenwriter about that aspect of the movie? Because
I don't know if it was the same exact. There's another section where he talks about how he wrote something like, "Don't put Freddy in the middle of the road.
Don't put Freddy in the middle of the street." Yeah, because originally they were supposed to be driving together, and they kept falling asleep, and Freddy kept popping up in the back seat, and you were never sure which one of them was dreaming and which one was awake, and it was supposed to be this like really confusing but like really intense scene because they didn't know who was awake, who was dreaming, and he added the note: if you do anything else with this scene, please don't just have Freddy pop up in the street and have them drive off the road. And of course, that's exactly what happens, because they cut to the most obvious choice like every single time.
That is just a wild decision. Like, even the screenwriter's like, "Guys, you can do anything you want." And then Platinum Dunes and New Line are like, "I don't know. The thing I want to do is like a 1/3 as interesting version of the original movie. Sure, let's just do that." It's like, what a fucking travesty.
So the idea, though, is that Freddy is trying to lure them into the basement so that they can find the clues. Like, that's a thing that you end up finding out, kind of. Like, because one of the original things that people always said is, why does Freddy play with people? And it's like, well, he's supposed to feed off their fear. But that's not an aspect of this movie. He's not feeding off any fear. He's trying to get them to solve a mystery, which ends up not being a mystery because that got changed. But so there's this whole movie, he's not even toying with people. He's trying to lure them to a location that doesn't pay off. It just ends up being like, oh, we were right the whole time. Like, there's nothing to solve here. And that's another thing like that. So we end up getting Freddy, who doesn't really have like a goal. He could easily have just popped up and murdered them if he just wanted to kill them, but then he's trying to lead them. So it just, the whole thing, it just ends up becoming kind of just this aimless mess.
Gina, we confronted this quite a bit in Dream Child, where the film's intention is one thing, and then it delivers something entirely more reprehensible.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we get
Yeah,
it again
absolutely.
here. This is absolutely, weirdly, a strange parallel between those two films, because here you have the whole thing here should be that they gain freedom from this horrible thing that happened to them in their past. And no, they just are forced to relive it by their abuser, and he kind of wins.
Right, because
and that is
yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, he's basically more or less telling you that he feeds off of their trauma.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's not fun. I don't want to dial a hotline for the guy that feeds off your trauma.
Right.
I don't want to.
Right. I don't want to hear a rap by the guy who feeds off your trauma.
I don't want.
That's why Drake didn't have a cool new track for this version of Nightmare on Elm Street, because it fucking sucks.
It's like he took all the. I mean, that I have had issues with how Freddy became kind of a pop culture icon. But in a weird sort of way, it's like, remember that Freddy you knew and loved, and that crazy guy? Well, he's a child molester now.
Yeah, they milkshake ducked a fictional character. Like
They milkshake ducked a child murderer into something worse. And it's
but again,
like,
a child killer is a fairy tale character. A child killer is a boogeyman. Like that is what a child killer like in like stories. That's what it, like you say it and you don't mean it. Like you don't get graphic about it. You're like child killer. That's what kids are
it's the
afraid
witch
of.
and Hansel and Gretel. Like you don't have to
right,
show
exactly.
the long list of children she ate.
Right.
It's an abstract concept.
It's something kids are afraid of.
Right. I mean, I think in the original Nightmare, it was like, well, he took them into the basement and he killed them. And okay, we don't need to know anything more than that. We don't need to see flashbacks. We don't need to see details or crime scene photos. The imagination, will do more than enough for that.
Yeah.
But here we've got the torn clothing and the compromising photographs, and he's reminiscing about when she was a little girl, and it's like, oh, for God's sake, what are you doing here? Why are you tormenting your audience like that?
Why does Platinum Dunes want to make every slasher into a torture killer?
Yeah.
We confronted this in the Friday the 13th thing, and it kind of like, it was, I don't know, they were trying something, okay? And it like almost worked. And at least it has like a really interesting Jason to work with, but he's still kidnapping people for no particular reason. Okay.
He's like turning into, he's like Buffalo Bill.
In a concrete bunker in the middle of the forest, because we all have one of those. But again, movie, I can almost live with that. But here we get this, Freddy can, put his hand all the way through somebody's chest for no particular reason. And then we get this cutaway to him with that same character saying, after your heart stops, your brain still operates for another 6 to 7 minutes. So now I'm going to have my fun with you during that 6 to 7 minutes. And I think that reads haunting and creepy and gross and frightening on the page, but it also ruins Freddy Krueger to a degree, and you're already actively ruining him. So why add to the fire, guys? Why?
Well, I think it's, it's the same thing a lot of remakes. This ain't your daddy's Freddy Krueger.
Oh, no, my daddy would not recognize this Freddy Krueger.
My daddy would not recognize Freddy Krueger. So
Mike Hamilton was into a lot of things. One was testing every piece of audiovisual equipment with his VHS tape of Top Gun. He liked to watch Formula One racing. He liked to yell at me while skiing because I wasn't good enough at it. And he liked to just stay mum a lot of the time. But I'll tell you, he would not recognize this Freddy Krueger.
because it is not your dad's Freddy Krueger.
It isn't. And my dad relished his version of Freddy Krueger. He talked about it at the dinner table all the time, and I just don't think he would approve. And
Do you know who Freddy Krueger this is? This is my second cousin's Freddy Krueger. This is my second cousin's husband's Freddy Krueger, because he's not that cool. He's not interesting. He doesn't do much, and we haven't heard from him in a long time.
And you don't want to look at his internet history.
No, you certainly do not.
Oh my God, you will want to burn your eyeballs out. And then they made a movie about him. Jesus Christ. I say this all the time. I say this about movies. I am constantly amazed that any good movies ever get made. Because movies are hard to make. We know that movies, it's amazing that anyone ever makes a quality film, because it's an impossible task. And to make a bad movie, a terribly bad movie, is even an amazing thing, because wow, the things that have to go wrong. This movie isn't even interestingly bad though. This is just a collaboration that just kind of just stayed aimless. And it makes me kind of sad, because it's not even it doesn't even try anything that fails it doesn't fail spectacularly. It just doesn't work. Yeah. I would agree with you. It isn't a travesty so much as it is a failed collaboration on the part of almost everyone involved. And there are some good people involved.
Oh, yeah.
They just don't want to be making this movie. And whoever was really in charge of the film definitely wanted to make this movie, and he should have been fired. It is not great. But it is not Neil Breen-erific. It's not Pieces, where it's so insane that it's an entertaining thing to look at. It's not bewildering in the fact that you can't follow it, and you have no idea what is the maniac behind the camera who's making all this happen. It's just confusing elements when it's hey everyone, we're gonna do this. No, we're not. And you know what? You were stupid for believing us. It's just depressing.
And Platinum Dunes has made some good movies. Platinum Dunes has been behind some decent films. But they just don't seem to really like the supernatural thing that much.
Well, but New Line does. New Line's addicted to the supernatural element. They hate the mundane.
Right.
And so between the two of them, they make very weird decisions. They're not a good marriage of creators. And as such, the things that they managed to come up with don't jibe. And I just feel like there was an era of New Line that was lost at sea.
Yeah.
And of course we still get a cameo from who I just learned, thanks to the internet, loved to force himself with loose, gross kisses on actresses.
Oh,
so I'm sorry I ever talked about you, head of New Line. You suck. You're a terrible person. And I wish I had known that at the beginning of this, because I would have shouted it from the fucking rafters.
Wait, was he in this?
Yes, he is a teacher in the background. He does not speak, but he is in the hallway.
Okay.
So you do see him, not as often as you do when Freddy's dead.
I got very excited because I thought that the teacher that was teaching the class that Chris had her dream. I thought it was played by the same actor who plays Cy Abelman in The Serious Man. It was not him though. I was disappointed.
No, that would have been nice.
Well, when are we going to get Greta Gerwig's in Nightmare on Elm Street?
It's a very good question.
She could clearly, why not? Why not at this point?
Yeah, let's get a real auteur behind this movie, because obviously, just getting whoever isn't working.
I don't see the point of just rebooting Nightmare on Elm Street where we get another Nancy or taking the same steps as the original.
Yeah,
I think just as you had said, Phil, just having a Freddy Krueger would be more than enough. But I also feel like I don't know that we need another Freddy Krueger movie.
Yeah.
I don't, as much as I miss Friday the 13th, I don't know that I'm going to get that kind of Friday back. I don't think anyone's going to take the reins and go, let's just like make 5 weird ones that barely cost any money and that really take the idea of it into odd places and do the unexpected. And that would be more fun. It would be looser, but there's so much expectation on a movie once you put A Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th that it's in a way, even your victories are weird failures and your failures are made even more magnified. And this failure made $116 million goddamn dollars. And they still didn't make another one because they're like, fuck that up, y'all.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Well, they also they won the People's Choice Award for Best Horror Film.
Who are these people? Gina, who are these people?
Well, 2010, I looked. That was a pretty slim pickings for horror movies that year. I think the most notable one was Insidious.
Oh yeah.
And then everything else was a whole lot of garbaggio.
Man.
So it wasn't exactly a wide open category.
How about A Nightmare on Elm Street where Freddy is like a political movement? Like it's a fleet of Freddys, or like it stands for Wall Street or something. Like just go in a different direction. Maybe it's a rogue computer program. Fred E.
Oh my God. We're into child's play territory.
See? I have my finger on a pulse.
Oh, sure you do.
Maybe not the pulse, but it's a pulse.
If you could find a way
pulse
to weave
of a
in,
hobo who's making his way across the country via the rails, but no, your finger's directly on it, Phil.
If you could find a way to weave it into some sort of 70s television show, like maybe Freddy goes to like Lidsville or something like that. That's a sure bet.
Or hey, everyone loves Set It in the 80s. Set it in the 80s. It's a surefire winner.
I mean, there are dozens of ways to actively do it, and I don't think anyone would pull the trigger on it because the expectation of it would once again be to make $160 million.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing yourself a disservice with that when setting limitations on it probably benefits it in the end, at least. I don't know, man. What are you going to do? Just for the sake of argument, here's a couple movies that came out in 2010. It wasn't that bad. Insidious, you have Let Me In, which was fucking amazing. Mm-hmm. Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which people have now discovered more via Netflix. Yeah. So you have The Crazies. Talk about a remake that works.
Yeah.
The Crazies work. Piranha, for what it's trying to do, it 100% succeeds at being the movie Piranha wants it to be. The Wolfman.
Oh. Can't win them all.
I saw that one in the theater.
I mean, the Wolfman's halfway. The Wolfman's another one that steals victory out of the jaws and slams it straight into defeat. I don't get that in the least.
But at least the Wolfman had an idea and it went after it.
Yeah.
It wasn't the best idea.
Black Swan also came out that year. So can't be all bad. I don't know how this wins over Black Swan or Insidious or The Crazies for that matter. I Saw the Devil came out that year. God damn, that's
especially just Insidious. Like your average moviegoers saw Insidious. Like, yes. Like the other ones may have been a little more like out of people's minds, your average people's choice voter's mind, but Insidious was like a big deal. That started a franchise.
And I know people are very anti jump scare, but this movie is terrible at it. It's just
because you can see them coming.
Terrible.
And they think they're being clever. Like the part where Chris goes into the bathroom and you think she's gonna stand up in the mirror and he's gonna be there. Nope, wait. And then okay, he's gonna be in the bed. He's gonna be in the bed. He's gonna be in the bed. Lo and behold, he was in the bed.
Yeah.
It thinks it's zigzagging on you, and it turns out it's just like, oh, I'm just fucking with you for no particular effect or reason or desire. It's not great. But you know what? Everyone's least favorite film is someone's favorite film. And for us, one of our listeners reached out to us via email and said, I think you guys are going to rip this apart, but I just want to say some things that I like about the movie. And he wanted those things to be voiced. And considering that all three of us kind of are on the same page. So Gina, are there a couple of things that we can highlight that he wanted to at least be said in the defense?
Yeah, I found one. I'm not going to read the whole thing because of time constraints, but there's one thing here that I can see his point, and I'm just going to read to you what he wrote. He says, in the reboot, the characters are actually afraid to fall asleep again because Freddy isn't just killing them the first time they go to sleep. You see him play the cat and mouse game again with more than just the main character. In the original, he toys with Nancy and Tina. In the later movies, the teenagers didn't even know of Freddy until it was too late most times. Here, he builds in their fear and continues to make them try to stay awake and drive them crazy. This movie also brought back dreaming while still being awake. I love this aspect and was very happy when it returned. It was played off better than in The Dream Child. In The Dream Child, it wasn't so much that Alice was staying awake too long, it was that her baby was sleeping and having dreams. This time it's the actual individual. It's no longer if you fall asleep you'll die. It's now no escape, because once you've stayed awake too long, he can come while you're awake. There's absolutely no escape this time. You know, that's a fair point. I think that's an interesting aspect that they could have done a lot more with than they did.
Yeah.
They give it lip service because at the very end, he tells Nancy, like, I made sure to make you so crazy and stay up for so long that when you did fall asleep, you're never going to wake up again. And you're like, hey, that's great. And he goes, hey, let me touch your dress. And you're like, oh, God damn it. You ruined it.
And he also suggests that a lot of people's issue is that it's not Robert Englund, which, you know, that's true. You know, I mean, I'm not going to argue that I think that Jackie Earle Haley, I think he did well, but in the service of a terrible plot.
Yeah.
I think that
he's trying.
Yeah. I mean, I think that he, you know, when he in the scenes where he's just his normal self, he's acting his little heart out.
Yeah.
And you know, but again, it's in the service of a movie in which the plot ultimately doesn't need its characters to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It pulls the rug out of good ideas and leaves you sitting in a pile of shit and goes, ha ha, dum. And that's what I don't like about it, is that every movie can make a mistake that is perfectly fine. Like, there's no perfect movies in the world. There's always something, and they don't work for everyone. I would never dream in a million years of trying to talk someone who loves this movie out of loving it.
No.
Because that's an emotional reaction. You can't control it. And there's lots of things that I can see someone loving in this movie. I just don't happen to. But there are a lot of things where this movie is on the edge, as it were, of glory. But it can't go there with you because it thumbs you in the eye like a Three Stooges character. It goes, dum. That's for believing in me. And that makes it actively terrible in a way that it shouldn't be, because it's actually making some interesting choices along the way. It's even more frustrating.
I just find it extremely distasteful to use child molestation as a shock tactic.
1000%. It is the dream child all over again. Probably almost even a little worse. It just, the victim blaming here is distasteful, and how it uses the concept of gaslighting against your main characters to no tangible benefit other than to rub your nose in it. It just, why everyone? It could have been good, but you know what? For me, it isn't. And I for those whose mileage does vary, you're more than allowed to. You should, but man, does it not for me.
Yeah, no, I went into this thinking that I would not care for it, and lo and behold, I did not care for it.
Well, I give it a thumbs up. Big recommend, actually. I know I was hard on it, but at the end of the day, it's a really enjoy. No, it's not. The best thing I had to. I mean, I hate to be that guy, but the best thing I had to say about it was that it's short. It's not that whole like we have to make this horror movie 2 hours long. It does its thing and it gets out. And I'm happy with that. And also it's on Netflix. And I was able to just be like, oh, look, it's just right here. I don't have to go find it.
Yeah, this is the first thing we watched for this in a while that I did not have to pay for. So that was nice.
Yeah.
So it's got that going for it, everyone. So yeah, I mean, is it worth watching? I don't think it's so actively terrible.
No.
That you would hate yourself afterwards. Just go in knowing that there's some real honest to goodness issues with this that people were very blind to, and blithely so, and just thought were super smart, and they are not. They are not. And I think if one were to have a history of abuse in your background, I would also caution against it.
Yeah, this definitely needs a big old content warning right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, super CW to the max. And
Yeah,
we're not talking about the.
It's and it doesn't which it doesn't earn in any way.
No, because it doesn't handle the subject with any sort of sensitivity or
realism
or insight or tact.
Illuminate anything about the condition.
Yeah, it's just like, well, we need to really figure out how to shock and repulse the audience. Well, let's bring in some child molestation and do it.
Yeah, you just like see a 50-year-old guy rubbing his meaty hands together going, we're really going to make him gross this time. And
I think that was actually one of the lines in the movie.
I don't know what you're talking about. I feed on your dissatisfaction with this movie.
You know, they say that they say the human brain continues thinking for another. I'm like, Freddy doesn't say a word, and then all of a sudden he's giving a dissertation. Like,
yeah, like where did you pick up on this? An Encyclopedia Britannica?
And it's far too long of a point to make, dude. Like, you're Freddy, like get in a one-liner and get out. You don't have to. He sets up a gag and then like pays it off. Like, they say that the brain continues thinking for a few minutes after. I'm like, yeah, get on with it. The guy's hanging there. He's gonna be dead by the time you're done discussing this. Not an efficient dream demon.
It really isn't. Phil, where can people hear more from you in this big bad world?
I have two podcasts. One is called Deep in Bear Country, a Berenstain Bearcast, where I talk about the Berenstain Bears books. I do not discuss anything horrific. My other podcast, though, that I do with my oldest child, Ollie, we do a podcast called It's Del Toro Time, and we are currently discussing his Ecstasy of Influence list. That is Guillermo del Toro's list of the most influential films in his life. We are about to release The Devils, which, oh boy, if you've never watched The Devils with your own child, I heartily recommend it.
Wow.
Oh my God. I can't believe this is happening. That is the wildest fucking thing I've ever heard of. Phil, that is a child. Do you understand that? I mean, I know that he is a teenager, but his brain is still developing.
Ollie is 18 years old. Ollie is in college. Ollie made the choice to watch this movie with me, and we diplomatically handled the rougher parts. But I will say that The Devils, Ken Russell's The Devils, is a fantastic motion picture.
It is absolutely aiming to be what it is, and what it is fucking disturbing.
Yeah. And it works.
Yeah.
Unlike A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010, it works.
Yeah. I mean, the guy knows how to make something visceral. I really often think about his Tommy and the grown woman rolling around in chocolate pudding.
Yeah. And baked beans.
Probably more often than I should.
And baked beans.
Tommy, more successful nightmare imagery than Nightmare on Elm Street 2010.
Yes. If you're looking for effective nightmare imagery, Tommy, right up your alley.
Tina Turner as the Acid Queen is a better Freddy Krueger than Jackie Earle Haley.
You're absolutely right.
Yes, let's get this campaign rolling, everybody.
Tina Turner for Freddy Krueger.
Tina Turner is my Freddy Krueger now. Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I write for The Spool. I am currently recapping weekly episodes of HBO's The Outsider. By the time this episode goes live, I think we should be just about getting to the end of the season. It's good stuff. If you're not watching it, you should be watching it. I also have my own website in which I write about movies and television and sometimes on personal stuff on GinaRadcliffe.com. And I am on Twitter far too often under Porcelain72.
And we love that when you contact us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. You know the handles. Please rate and review us on iTunes. It helps us be seen and heard by more people. We also have the Patreon, which is lots of fun stuff is happening over there. Gina, don't we have a new patron?
We do. We have a new patron at the $10 level. It's the unsettlingly named John Doe. I hope that if he does not win the next drawing for the choose a movie for us to watch, that someone's head does not end up in a box. But yeah, thank you, John Doe, if that's your real name.
If that is your real name, and we may never know, but your support is real, and that's what we appreciate. And so until next time, when finally, everyone, we will be talking about Freddy versus Jason. That's right.
For the next 3 years.
Forever. There are so many deaths in this thing. Just plotting it out is taking what feels like forever. And here's a quick preview. Freddy has a vagina nose. So it's finally the Freddy you always wanted.
Still more tasteful than this, Freddy.
Oh, yeah. No, it feels like a warm blanket, that vagina nose on Freddy Krueger with his constantly shifting teeth. So it's a real listen, to be honest with you, I kind of like, I'm like, oh, I got to write down how many people die, and we can only cover about 20 minutes of this. There's so much death and things to talk about. And I'm just like, oh my God. We're back, baby. We're back. We're talking my man, Jason V. We're going to get into it on Freddy versus Jason. And for how long that takes, we are going to talk about every millisecond of it and its own distasteful elements for maybe the rest of the year. Who's to say? But until then, thank you, everyone, for myself. For Gina, for Phil.
Hey.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.